Welcome to the Let's Not Meet Nightmare playlist. Make sure to let me know what types of videos you'd like to see within the Let's Not Meet subgenre. I'll also be posting a card with polls for various subgenres of Let's Not Meet, and I'm using that to determine what stories to do next. With that said, let us continue the Nosleep Nightmare playlist. So, first of all, I'm a 21-year-old man, and this happened to me and my boyfriend in the summer of 2016. I'd also say that English isn't my first language, so I'm sorry if my English is somewhat bad. A little background. I live in Norway, which is a small, safe country, where usually the creepiest thing to happen to you would be a nasty look from a stranger on the bus. Because of this, I never thought anything creepy would happen to me, because, well, it just doesn't happen here. The city I live in is called Hanfoss, which basically translates to Chicken Falls. In the fall of 2015, right around the time I turned 20 years old, I moved out from my mom into my first apartment. The apartment was in the basement of a house, and the owner of the house was an older, single woman who lived over me. But we didn't get along that well. The house was situated at the end of a gravel road, in a wooded area with fields around it, about 1 kilometer from the main road. The last part of the road, before you got to the house, was up a steep hill. To get to my apartment, you had to walk through the front gate and around the house to get to the basement where I lived. Right outside my door, there was a small porch which was usually just used if I or any guest wanted to smoke. Because of the house being up on a hill, there was a really steep wooded slope about 5 meters from the entrance. This was also the end of the backyard. So I basically lived right next to the woods. Anyways, here's the story about one of the creepiest things that has ever happened to me and my boyfriend. So this all started in May of 2016, when my boyfriend, Sam, moved in. He lived in Oslo, and therefore we needed a car to move all his things. His best friend Jessica agreed to help us when she got off work, which meant it was going to be a long night. Around 11:30 p.m., we left Oslo and started to drive to my place. Because of the road work, we had to stop for some time and didn't arrive until about 1 a.m. at my place. Because Hanfoss is a small city, it was dead silent when we arrived. We started unloading the car, and I grabbed some plastic bags and went around the house. Right as I stepped onto the small porch outside the basement, I heard a sound from the woods down the steep slope. It was the sound of leaves rustling in a particular rhythm, as if someone was walking in the woods and kicking leaves when they lifted their feet. I thought this was kind of weird because I knew there wasn't any hiking trail down there or any other reason someone would be walking there at 1 a.m. It was just woods and an empty field. Sam came up behind me and he also stopped, wondering why I was just standing there and listening. "Shh, do you hear that? The leaf sounds," I asked, but he didn't answer. Jessica had also stopped to listen at this moment. "Hear what?" Jessica asked. But before I even had a chance to answer her, Sam told her about the rustling sound. "Yeah, I hear it. What is it?" she asked, but I literally had no idea. We all just brushed it off as some neighbors or kids, even though there wasn't a lot of neighbors that far into the woods. About a week later, at 1 a.m., me and Sam sat outside smoking, when again, I heard the sounds from the woods. We joked about what it could be, because, I said, we're in Norway and creepy things just don't happen here. Stupid thinking, I know. We didn't pay much attention to the sounds. Eventually we went inside. A week later, same time, we heard the noises again. At this time, I actually pieced together that this happened at the same weekday, same time, which was kind of strange, and we got a little scared. We joked about it being a killer living in an old abandoned house next to us, or some other creep like the ones we'd read about on Let's Not Meet. We laughed, and again brushed it off as just some kids or an animal. But still, we were somewhat afraid of what it could be. The next week passed by without any sounds from the woods. We completely forgot about it until the week after. I didn't want to smoke, so Sam went out on the porch alone. After a few minutes, Sam burst through the door. His eyes were wide and he sounded scared, and he whispered, "Quick, I can hear those sounds again." I ran outside and listened from the porch. Sam was right. The sounds were there again, the same rhythm and pace as before. Only this time, it sounded as if they were closer. I was a little nervous, so I just looked at Sam, who was just as nervous as me. Still, being so sure of nothing happening to us because of our safe country, we walked closer to the slope, and I shouted, "Haha, very funny. Maybe I should call the police and let them know someone is creeping around my house." Both just laughed, but then we heard the sounds stopping immediately. Thinking we scared off whoever was in the woods, we enjoyed the silence, and I shouted, "Lol." Right as I had shouted, we heard the sound again, just faster and louder. And this time, it sounded as if someone was full-on sprinting right towards us from down the steep slope. Imagine if you've ever tried walking up a steep hill covered in leaves, and your feet almost slipping out from under you because it's so steep. That was the sound we could hear. At the same time, both Sam and I just turned and run as fast as we can inside, cigarette still in hand, lock the door and turn off all the lights, and fall to the floor. I was so scared. "Did you hear that too?" I asked. Sam looked terrified and nodded. "And someone was running towards us?" I asked, and he just nodded again. Right as he nodded, we heard a sound that still gives us goosebumps to this day. It was the sound of boots walking on the wooden porch. I was so shocked, my mouth just open while holding my breath, scared that whoever was on the other side of the door could hear us. Sam looked at me and pointed to the door in a panic, signaling that he also heard it. I lifted my shoulders. I guess it's the international gesture for I don't know. We both just sat there for some time, too scared to move to the living room. When we heard a loud bang on the window next to the door, we both just sat there trying not to make a sound. Now, the way the house was built was so that the upstairs where the lady was at street level, but if you went around back, it would look like a 2-story house, even though my apartment was the basement. So basically, just half of my apartment was the basement, if that makes any sense. The layout of my apartment was that when you entered the apartment, there was a bedroom to your right, a kitchen straight ahead of you. Next to it was a bathroom, which was between the kitchen and the living room, which was to your left. The living room was fully underground, and just had a small window by the ceiling, and you could just see a flower bed and a bush. But now, we could also see a pair of worn-out boots in the dark. I looked at Sam and pointed to the window and whispered, "Kvan?" Norwegian for what the fuck. Sam didn't say anything and just looked at me, still terrified. I'm not sure if the person outside even knew where in the apartment we were, because then he probably would have sat down to look at us. Maybe he thought the basement and the upstairs were connected and that we ran inside and upstairs, and now the person outside is trying to look inside if he could see us. We crawled into the bathroom and locked the door and just sat there. We didn't have our phones, so I'm not sure how long we sat there. We sat there listening, but we couldn't hear anything. After probably half an hour, we crawled to the living room and put the sofa pillows in front of the small window and called my mother to ask what we should do and if we should bother to call the police. Stupid Norwegians, I know. We should have called them as soon as we got our phones, but it's just not how we do it over here. And besides, the person was most likely gone now anyways. My mother was kind of angry that we woke her up at 2 a.m., but after we told her what happened, she said it was okay, and that we should call the police if we felt it was necessary. At that time, we were just tired, and we knew there was nothing the police could do. I mean, we didn't actually see the face of the person or anything other than his boots. We were actually planning to move anyways because of some disagreements over the rent with the lady upstairs, so I didn't ask her if she noticed anything the next day. We moved out like a week later. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think of this format. If you like it, then what I'll do is upload longer stories as individual ones, then only combine multiple stories into one video if the stories are shorter. And if you like the videos and narrations that I create, make sure to like and subscribe so I can spend more time creating music and narrations for you. And if you're interested in hearing the music that I compose for my videos and narrations, I'll link to my second YouTube channel, as well as my Reverb Nation account, in the description. I'll see you in the next video.